Welcome to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Alexander Thorne, and if you're joining us for the first time, you've chosen rather a splendid evening to begin. We specialize in long, languid mysteries, the sort you can lose an entire rainy afternoon to, or play softly while the kettle boils and the world outside forgets you exist. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Harrington Hall. Tonight we begin a tale that will stretch across 10 chapters and more than 90 minutes of your time. So do settle in properly. Pour something amber, or perhaps a delicate tisane, if you're of Monsieur Poirot's persuasion. And when you're quite comfortable, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. A cottage in the Cotswolds? A high-rise in Singapore? A train rattling through the Scottish Highlands? I read every one. Now dim the lights just a touch, and let us step back to the autumn of 1965, when the fog still clung to London like a guilty secret. And Hercule Poirot, the greatest detective the world had ever known, was about to be drawn into a puzzle more tangled than the roots of an ancient yew. It was a Tuesday in late October, the sort of morning when the Thames lay pewter flat beneath a sky the colour of wet slate. In the modest but exquisitely ordered apartment at 56B Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot stood before his mirror, adjusting the points of a dove-grey cravat with the solemnity of a priest preparing the Eucharist. His reflection, compact, dapper, the famous egg-shaped head gleaming, nodded approval. The moustache, that magnificent edifice of wax and pride, curved in perfect symmetry. Order, symmetry, perfection. These were the trinity by which Poirot lived. From the sitting-room came the rustle of newsprint. Captain Arthur Hastings, late of the Western Front, and now Poirot's steadfast companion, was attacking the Times with the enthusiasm of a terrier. "By Jove, Poirot!" he exclaimed, folding the paper with a crack. "There's a piece here about that Egyptian dig in the Valley of the Kings. Chap named Sinclair unearthed a bracelet. Solid gold, lapis lazuli, the works. Says it's cursed. Owners drop like flies, apparently." Poirot did not turn. "Cursed, mon ami? Pfft! The English, they invent curses the way the French invent sauces, liberally and with no regard for evidence." Hastings grinned. "All the same, I'd wager you'd like a peek at it. You and your passion for the exotic." At that precise moment, the doorbell gave its discreet double chime. Mrs. Murchison, Poirot's redoubtable Scottish housekeeper, admitted a liveried messenger bearing a silver salver. Upon it lay a telegram crisp as frost. Poirot slit the envelope with a mother-of-pearl letter opener. His eyebrows ascended like twin caterpillars on a stroll. "Écoute, Hastings. It is from Lord Reginald Harrington. You recall the name?" "Harrington? The antiquities fellow? Built half the Egyptian wing at the British Museum, didn't he? Précisément. He invites Hercule Poirot, moi, to spend the weekend at Harrington Hall, his estate in Sussex. He has, he says, acquired the very bracelet of which you speak. He wishes me to authenticate it. Also," Poirot's eyes twinkled, "to lay to rest the absurd notion of a curse." Hastings whistled. "Country house, roaring fire source, almost certainly a murder or two. You'll go, of course?" Poirot permitted himself a small, satisfied smile. But naturally, one does not refuse a puzzle served on a silver platter. The journey south was a masterpiece of British rail efficiency. The Pullman carriage smelled of beeswax and toast. Poirot, ensconced in a corner seat, sipped chocolate from a porcelain cup, while Hastings devoured a detective novel whose plot, he declared, was absolute tosh. Outside, the city dissolved into water meadows and hop fields gilded with autumn. Poirot gazed at the passing hedgerows, his mind already arranging facts like chess pieces. Lord Reginald Harrington, 54 years old, baronet, widower of one wife, collector of antiquities, reputedly worth $750,000 even after the crash. Known for a temper as florid as his waistcoats. The bracelet, gold, lapis, emeralds, inscription in hieroglyphs. Alleged provenance, tomb of a consort of Pharaoh Amenhotep III. Previous owners, an Austrian count who drowned in his bath, a Parisian banker who shot himself, a New York socialite who perished in a fire. Coincidence? Poirot's moustache twitched. No. At Polgut, a Rolls-Royce Phantom II awaited, its brass gleaming like a guardsman's button. The chauffeur, a taciturn man named Wilkins, touched his cap. "Lord Harrington's compliments, sir. We'll have you at the hall in 20 minutes." The drive wound through lanes overhung with copper beeches. Harrington Hall rose at the end of a gravel sweep. Tudor brick flushed rose by the westering sun, mullioned windows winking, chimneys exhaling lazy plumes. It was the sort of house that had witnessed the Wars of the Roses, and still looked smug about it. Wilkins drew up beneath a porte-cochere where ivy clung like green lace. The front door, a fortress of oak studded with iron, swung open. Lord Reginald Harrington filled the doorway the way a galleon fills a harbour. 6'2", broad as a brewer's dray, waistcoat straining over a stomach that spoke of vintage port and no nonsense. His moustache was a rival to Poirot's own, though less disciplined. "Mr. Poirot, capital, and Captain Hastings, splendid." His voice could have summoned hounds across 3 counties. Come in, leave your bags, Graves will see to them." They stepped into a hall panelled in dark oak, its air heavy with beeswax and wood smoke. A fire roared in a grate large enough to roast an ox. Above the mantel, a portrait of a Cavalier ancestor smirked down as though he knew where the bodies were buried. "Allow me to present the ship company," Harrington boomed, leading them toward the drawing-room. "We're a small party, but choice." First came Lady Evelyn Harrington, the second wife, 38, ash-blonde, eyes the green of malachite. She wore a tea-gown of smoke-grey chiffon that clung like mist. Her handshake was cool, her smile practiced, but Poirot caught the flicker of strain at the corners of her mouth. "Mr. Poirot," she murmured, "Reginald speaks of little else since your acceptance. He is convinced you will debunk this silly curse." Next, Miss Emily Cartwright, niece to Lord Harrington, 25, fresh from a finishing school in Paris. Dark curls, vivacious laugh, a frock of primrose silk that cost more than a junior clerk earned in a year. She curtsied with theatrical grace. "Uncle Reggie promised me an Egyptian weekend," she trilled. "I do hope there'll be mummies." Dr. Alastair Sinclair, the archaeologist, unfolded himself from an armchair like a heron. Tall, thin, early 40s, spectacles perpetually sliding down a beakish nose. His tweeds smelled of pipe tobacco and desert dust. He clutched a leather-bound notebook as though it were a talisman. "Mr. Poirot," he said, voice reedy with excitement, "an honour. The bracelet is genuine 18th dynasty, mark my words. The curse, however—" He trailed off, blinking rapidly. "A nervous tick," Poirot noted. Miss Vera Lang, the American heiress, lounged upon a chaise longue in a gown of scarlet satin that would have startled a cardinal. 32, bobbed hair like polished jet, a cigarette in an ivory holder trailing aromatic smoke. Diamonds flashed at her throat, real ones. "Call me Vera, sugar," she drawled. "Reggie and I have been scrapping over that bracelet since Sotheby's. I offered £50,000. He topped me at 55. Men are such children." Finally, Mr. Elias Graves, the butler. 60, ramrod spine, face carved from granite. A scar ran from his left ear to the corner of his mouth. Souvenir of Passchendaele. His eyes, pale grey, missed nothing. He bowed with military precision. "Dinner at 8, sir. Sherry in the library at 7:30. Harrington clapped his hands. "Excellent! Now, Poirot, you'll want to see the prize." He led them to the library, a cathedral of books, ladders on brass rails, the scent of Morocco leather and cigars. In the centre stood a mahogany display case. Beneath a glass dome lay the bracelet. Poirot leaned close. It was exquisite. Heavy gold links, each inset with a scarab of lapis lazuli. At the clasp, a cartouche bore hieroglyphs. Emeralds winked like malevolent eyes. "Magnificent," Poirot breathed. "The workmanship, superb. And the inscription?" Dr. Sinclair cleared his throat. Roughly translated, "Death to the thief who dares adorn the arm, not born to it." The consort's name was Timerut. Lady Evelyn gave a delicate shudder. "Reginald insists on wearing it to the ball tomorrow. A costume affair, Egyptian theme. He means to defy the curse publicly." Harrington laughed, a sound like boulders in a barrel. "Stuff and nonsense. I bought it fair and square. Curse can't touch a Harrington." Miss Lang exhaled smoke through perfect nostrils. "Careful, Reggie. Hubris-felled pharaohs." Emily clapped her hands. "I shall be a temple dancer. Uncle, may I try it on, just for a moment?" "Absolutely not," Lady Evelyn snapped, then softened. "It's unlucky, darling." Graves materialized with a tray of cocktails. "Sherry, sir? Or something stronger?" Poirot accepted a sirop de cassis. As he sipped, he observed, Hastings murmured, "Rum lot, eh? Motives thicker than clotted cream." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Motifs, oui. Mais le mobile, c'est tout. We shall see." Dinner was announced. They processed to a dining room lit by 100 candles, the table a battlefield of silver and crystal. Consommé, sole meunière, roast pheasant with bread sauce, a Chateau d'Yquem that made Hastings sigh like a lover. Conversation danced, the collapse of the hat market, the latest Cochrane review, the scandal of Lady Diana Cooper's pearls. Beneath it, undercurrents swirled. Lady Evelyn to Poirot, softly. "Reginald has been distracted since acquiring the bracelet, sleepless. He keeps it in the safe, yet checks it hourly." Dr. Sinclair, overheated. "The curse is psychological, of course. Autosuggestion. Still, 3 owners dead in 5 years. Miss Lang, mocking. Perhaps the 4th will be the charm." Emily, tipsy on champagne. "I asked Uncle for an advance on my allowance. He refused. Said the estate was stretched. Imagine." Graves, refilling claret, let a drop fall upon the damask cloth. His apology was immediate, but Poirot noted the tremor in the scarred hand. After port and Stilton, the ladies withdrew. The men lingered over cigars. Harrington produced a cedar box. Monte Cristos, smuggled from Havana. He offered one to Poirot, who declined with a polite shudder. Harrington leaned back, smoke wreathing his florid face. "Between us, Poirot, I'm not entirely easy. Had a letter last week, anonymous. Said return the bracelet or suffer the curse. Rot, of course. But Evelyn's nerves." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "You have this letter." "Burned it. Superstitious nonsense." Upstairs, in the guest wing, Poirot and Hastings were given adjoining rooms panelled in cedar, with 4 posters that had slept dukes. A fire crackled. Hastings poked it vigorously. "Devilish business, Poirot. That bracelet's a positive magnet for trouble." Poirot removed his patent leather shoes, aligning them precisely. "Précisément. Tomorrow, the costume ball. Lord Harrington will wear the bracelet. And then, mon ami, we shall see what we shall see." Outside the wind rose. Somewhere in the old house, a shutter banged. Poirot stood at the window, gazing over moonlit gardens where yew trees twisted like supplicants. In the silence, he murmured to his reflection, "Hercule Poirot, tu es sur la piste d'un drame. Mais quel drame?" And there we pause, gentle listener, at the end of Chapter 1. The board is set, the piece is in motion. Already the shadows lengthen at Harrington Hall, and somewhere in the darkness a hand reaches for poison, or perhaps for something far more subtle. Shall we continue? Chapter 2 awaits, where the first whisper of tragedy will chill the autumn air. But for now, stretch your legs, refill your glass, and tell me below, who do you suspect and why? Until the next chime of the grandfather clock. Good night. Chapter 2 Whispers of the Curse. Before we proceed, a gentle reminder. If you're listening on headphones, keep one ear free for the kettle. And do leave a comment. What did you make of that anonymous letter Lord Harrington burned? Every theory feeds the little grey cells. The household woke late, the previous night's port and Monte Cristos leaving a velvet haze over breakfast. In the winter parlour, silver chafing dishes exhaled kedgeree and devilled kidneys. The coffee was thick as Cairo mud. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in a charcoal morning coat, entered precisely at 9:30. Captain Hastings followed, yawning, his tie askew. Lady Evelyn presided over the urn, violet shadows beneath her eyes. "Good morning, gentlemen. Reginald is in the gun-room, polishing his defiance." Emily Cartwright burst in, cheeks pink from the chill. "I've been riding. The fog's like soup. Couldn't see the hounds." She snatched toast, scattering crumbs like confetti. Dr. Sinclair appeared last, spectacles fogged, clutching a leather folio. "I must photograph the bracelet in natural light. The lapis shifts colour at dawn. Quite extraordinary." Miss Vera Lang sauntered in wearing jodhpurs and a scowl. "Reggie promised me a tour of the cellars. 1904 claret, apparently. I'll believe it when I taste it." Graves, impassive, poured coffee with the gravity of a priest dispensing communion. Poirot declined kidneys, accepting instead a single coddled egg, symmetry dans l'œuf, and addressed the table. "Milord Harrington, when may I examine the safe where the bracelet reposes?" Harrington's laugh boomed from the doorway. He wore +4s and a scowl. "Safe? Devil take the safe! Found the blasted thing on my desk this morning. Must have carried it up from the library myself. Port playing tricks." He patted his breast pocket. The bracelet glinted against tweed. Lady Evelyn's cup rattled in its saucer. "Reginald, you promised?" "Promised to wear it tonight and laugh at superstition, so I shall." Dr. Sinclair's tick flared. "My lord, the inscription is a sales pitch for gullible tourists." Harrington cut him off. "Poirot, walk with me. I'll show you the study where the deed will be done." Sound. Boots on parquet, then the shoe, creak of an oak door. The study was a gentleman's fortress, panelled in walnut, a partner's desk the size of a billiard table, French windows giving onto a terrace slick with dew. A green leather safe squatted in the corner like a sulky toad. Harrington spun the dial. "Combination is my wedding date. Evelyn thinks I've forgotten. Women." The door yawned. Inside, velvet niches for jewels, a revolver, bundles of letters tied with faded ribbon. Empty. Poirot's gaze swept the room. Bolts on the door, solid brass, recently oiled. Windows latched from within. No chimney wide enough for a cat. A single key hung on a nail beside the safe. "Last night," Harrington said, "I locked the bracelet in here at 11:30. Graves witnessed. I took the key to bed. Yet here it is on my desk at 7, and the safe untouched. Explain that, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot stroked his moustache. A puzzle most intriguing. The room, she is hermetiquement scellée. Sealed, yes? Yet the bracelet travels, like the genie from the bottle. Hastings, who had trailed behind, whistled. Someone's playing silly beggars, or the curse is mobile. Harrington snorted. Servants, probably. I'll have Graves question the maids. At that moment, a scream, high shredding, ripped through the house. Sound, a woman's cry cut short, running feet, a crash of porcelain. They dashed into the corridor. Lady Evelyn stood outside the morning room. One hand pressed to her throat. At her feet lay a shattered Meissen shepherdess. "The safe in the study," she gasped. "I went to fetch Reginald's correspondence. It's open. The velvet tray for the bracelet. Gone." The party converged. Dr. Sinclair's face drained to parchment. The curse. It demands return to the tomb. Miss Lang's eyes glittered. Or someone's helping themselves. Emily clutched her aunt. "Aunt Evie, you're trembling." Graves materialized, scar-livid. "I locked the study door myself at midnight, my lord. No one has a duplicate key." Poirot knelt by the safe. No scratches, no wax impressions. The combination dial sat at 0. He sniffed. Faint scent of lavender water. Tiens, a woman's perfume, or a man who borrows his wife's toilette. Harrington's roar rattled the sconces. "Search the house! Every room, every drawer!" An hour later, the bracelet reposed once more on Harrington's wrist. Graves discovered it in the linen cupboard, wrapped in one of Emily's silk stockings. Emily flushed crimson. "Someone's using my things to cast suspicion," Dr. Sinclair muttered about case spirits. Miss Lang suggested a séance. Lady Evelyn retired with sal volatile. Poirot, in the conservatory amid orchids and the smell of damp earth, questioned Graves. "You served in the war, monsieur?" "Passchendaele, sir. Gassed, hence the scar. And poisons? You handled them?" Graves's eyes flickered. "Phosgene, mustard, never cyanide." Poirot noted the butler's shoes, polished, but a smear of fresh mud on the sole. Outside, the fog thickened. From the gunroom came the metallic click of Harrington loading a shotgun. "If the thief tries again tonight, by God, I'll give him both barrels." Hastings found Poirot in the library, poring over a volume of Egyptology. "Dash it, Poirot, the bracelet's vanished twice and returned like a bad penny. Either we've a magician in the house, or the curse is very convenient for someone who wishes us to look everywhere except the truth." Poirot closed the book. "Tonight, mon ami, is the costume ball? Lord Harrington will wear the bracelet in public, and Hercule Poirot will watch every hand that reaches for it." Chapter 3. The Fatal Evening. If you're settled with a fresh cup, excellent. If not, pause. Chapter 3 will wait. And when you return, whisper in the comments, what disguise would you choose for such a night? Now, let the orchestra play. The great hall had been transformed. Swags of gold tissue draped the rafters. Papier-mâché lotus columns rose like sentinels. A gramophone the size of a small coffin spun, "Yes, sir, that's my baby," while footmen in linen kilts circulated with champagne coupes frosted like the Nile at dawn. Lord Reginald Harrington entered at 10:15, magnificent as Tutankhamun. A name's headdress of blue and gold striped linen framed his florid face. A broad collar of faience beads clinked across his chest. On his right wrist blazed the cursed bracelet. Gold, lapis, emeralds catching the chandelier light in wicked flashes. He raised a goblet of champagne. "To the gods of Egypt and to their impotence!" Laughter rippled, but Poirot, watching from the shadow of a palm, noted the tremor in the goblet's stem. Lady Evelyn, as Cleopatra, glided beside him. Her gown was black net over cloth of silver. A asp coiled in diamonds at her brow. Her smile was regal, but her knuckles whitened on Harrington's arm. Dr. Alastair Sinclair shuffled in as a scribe. White kilt, ink-stained fingers, a reed pen behind one ear. His spectacles glinted whenever the bracelet flashed. The tick at his left eye beat like a trapped moth. Miss Vera Lang, incarnated Nefertiti, scarlet sheath dress, tall blue crown, coal-lined eyes that could start wars. She moved through the crowd collecting admirers the way a magnet collects iron filings. Emily Cartwright twirled past as a temple dancer, diaphanous veils, anklets chiming, midriff bare. She snatched a glass from a passing tray and laughed too loudly when a subaltern in Roman armour trod on her toe. Captain Hastings, persuaded into a centurion's breastplate, looked uncomfortable but game. "Feel a perfect ass, Poirot. You, of course, refused costume." Poirot, immaculate in white tie, murmured, "Hercule Poirot is costume enough." He sipped a sirop de menthe and watched. Graves, the butler, had surrendered his tails for a leopard skin, loincloth, and a pharaoh's crook. The scar on his face looked freshly livid beneath the torchlight. He directed footmen with military crispness. At 11, the gramophone gave way to a live quartet. Couples spilled onto the floor in a riot of silk and feathers. Harrington danced with Vera Lang. Their reflection in the mirrored wall showed the bracelet flashing like a signal beacon. Poirot drifted to the musician's dais. He notes Sinclair slipping out to the terrace, alone, Emily accepting a second, third, champagne from a footman whose tray trembled. Lady Evelyn watching her husband with the fixity of a cobra. Graves refilling the ice bucket from a silver urn, his scarred hand lingering over the cubes. At 11:30, Harrington detached himself, mopping his brow with a linen handkerchief. "Need a breather? Study, cigar, back in 10 minutes. He clapped Hastings on the shoulder. "Keep an eye on my queen, Captain." He strode off, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. The study door closed with a decisive click. Poirot heard the bolt shoot home. The quartet struck up, "Ain't we got fun?" Hastings whirled Emily. Vera Lang cornered Sinclair by the punch bowl, her laughter sharp as broken glass. 11:40, 11:50. Midnight approached. Lady Evelyn approached Poirot, asp glinting. "He's been gone 20 minutes. The study. Something's wrong." Poirot's moustache bristled. "Allons-y." They crossed the corridor. The study door stood shut, the bolt still thrown from within. Poirot knocked, once, twice. Silence. "Reginald!" Evelyn's voice cracked. Hastings arrived with Sinclair and Vera. Graves materialized, crook in hand. Poirot tried the handle, locked. He pressed an ear to the panel, nothing. "Break it," Evelyn whispered. Hastings and Graves put shoulders to oak. The door shuddered, gave. They stumbled into the study. Harsh sound. A single terrible scream, Lady Evelyn's, then the crash of a chair overturned. Lord Harrington lay slumped across the desk, headdress askew, face purple. Foam flecked his lips, his eyes bulged in final outrage. The bracelet gleamed on his wrist untouched. A crystal tumbler lay spilled, whiskey soaking into Persian silk. The scent, bitter almonds. Poirot knelt. Pulse, none. Rigour not yet begun. Death within the last 15 minutes. He surveyed the room. Door bolted from inside. Windows latched, curtains undisturbed. Key on the inner side of the lock. Safe closed. Combination unchanged. A single glass. A decanter 3/4 full. No weapon, no intruder, no secret panel. Hastings breathed. Good God! Locked room, poison. Sinclair's tick went into overdrive. The curse. Vera Lang's coal smudged. "Cyanide. Smell it." Emily arrived, veils fluttering, eyes wide. "Uncle Reggie?" Lady Evelyn sank to her knees, asp-crown tumbling. "He was wearing it. The curse—" Graves stood rigid. "I saw no one enter, sir. The corridor was empty." Poirot rose, eyes glittering. "No, not curse. Murder. And murder most impossible." Outside, the quartet played on, oblivious. Inside, the clock struck 12. 12 slow, iron notes that sounded like a death knell. Chapter 4. The investigation begins. The masks are off, the champagne flat, the corpse cooling. Harrington Hall wakes to the grey reality of murder. Inspector Japp is on his way from London, but Hercule Poirot has already begun to measure the room with his eyes, and the silence with his little grey cells. If you need a moment to stoke the fire, or top up your cup, take it now. The next hour belongs to questions. And do leave a note below. What single detail from last night troubles you most? Now, let the inquest begin. Poirot stood alone in the study at 7:30, the body having been removed to the billiard room under a dust sheet. The air still carried the faint, cloying sweetness of cyanide. He moved like a tailor taking measurements. 1 pace from desk to door, 2 to the window, 3 to the safe. The bolt was solid brass, recently polished, no scratches on the screws. The key remained in the lock, turned from the inside. Windows, double casement, iron latches painted shut decades ago, showed no sign of tampering. The chimney was narrow, soot-caked, impossible for a man. On the desk, the spilled tumbler, a ring of moisture darkening the leather inset, the decanter cut crystal, 3 fingers of whiskey remaining. Poirot lifted it to the light. No sediment, no cloudiness. He stoppered it with a cork from his pocket. A faint scuff on the rug caught his eye. Mud, still damp, the colour of the kitchen garden. He scraped a sample into an envelope with his penknife. Sound, motorcar tyres on gravel, a horn blast, 2 short, 1 long. Inspector Japp arrived at 8:15, bowler hat dripping, moustache bristling with indignation. Sergeant Hale followed, laden with a black bag and a scowl. "Poirot, you Belgian busybody," Japp growled, shaking rain from his coat. "Country house, locked room, titled corpse. Couldn't keep your nose out, could you?" Poirot inclined his head. "Mon cher Japp, you are wet, you are cross, you are predictable. Come, the body awaits." They repaired to the billiard room. Dr. Meredith, the local police surgeon, straightened from his examination. Cyanide, potassium salt, I'd say. Ingested in the whiskey. Death within 3 to 5 minutes, no struggle. Time, between 11:40 and midnight. Japp grunted. "Alibis?" "Shaky as a drunk on ice," Meredith replied. "Ball in full swing. Dozens saw Lord Harrington enter the study alone. Door bolted. No one admits leaving the hall until Lady Evelyn raised the alarm at 12:05. Poirot addressed the suspects, assembled in the morning room under the stern gaze of a stuffed tiger. Lady Evelyn Harrington, pale, veiled in black, sat rigid. "I danced with Captain Hastings until 11:50. Then I noticed Reginald missing. Waited, then went to the study. Emily Cartwright, eyes red-rimmed, clutched a lace handkerchief. I was with the subaltern, Tommy Hargreaves, until the quartet stopped for a break. Ask him." Dr. Alistair Sinclair pushed spectacles up his nose. "I stepped onto the terrace for air at 11:30. Returned at 11:55. Several guests saw me." Miss Vera Lang lit a cigarette with steady fingers. "I was at the punch bowl, arguing politics with the vicar. He'll confirm." Mr. Graves stood at parade rest. "I supervised the footman until midnight. Then I checked the silver pantry. No one passed me in the corridor." Poirot's gaze lingered on Graves's shoes, polished, but a trace of garden mud on the left sole. Jap barked, "Search every room! Poison doesn't walk in on its own." Sound montage. Drawers yanked, mattresses upended, a maid's shriek, the clatter of a dropped tray. By 10 o'clock, greenhouse, a shelf of rat poison, arsenic, not cyanide. Emily's room, a silk stocking missing, the one used to wrap the bracelet yesterday. Sinclair's folio, notes on the bracelet's provenance, plus a draft letter offering it to the Cairo Museum for $60,000. Vera Lang's jewel case, a receipt for $55,000 paid to Sotheby's. Harrington had outbid her. Graves's pantry, a small vial labelled cyanide for photographic use. Empty. Graves paled. "From the war, sir, for developing plates. I thought it destroyed." Jap pounced. "Convenient, and your boots, mud from the terrace path." "Pruning roses at dawn, Inspector. Lord Harrington's orders." Poirot examined the vial. Fingerprints smudged, but a faint trace of lavender water on the cork. Hastings whispered, "Dash it, Poirot. The room was locked. How did the poison get in?" Poirot tapped the decanter. La bouteille, or the glass, or he indicated the ice bucket, now melted to lukewarm water. The ice. Jap ordered the bucket sent to the Yard laboratory. Poirot returned to the study. He lay on the rug, eye level with the desk leg. A single emerald green bead, glass, not gemstone, lay in the crack between floorboards. He pocketed it. At noon, Jap gathered the household in the library. Facts: cyanide in the whiskey, room sealed. No secret passages, blueprints confirm. Lord Harrington alone from 11:40 to 12:05. Someone got poisoned to him without entering. Suggestions. Sinclair muttered. "The curse? Stuff the curse," Jap snapped. Poirot raised a finger. "Un moment. The glass. Lipstick trace. Faint coral pink. Whose shade?" Vera Lang's cigarette paused halfway to her lips. "Mine. But half the women here borrowed it." Emily flushed. "I used it too, before the ball." Lady Evelyn touched her lips. "I never wear coral." Poirot nodded. "Interesting." He produced the green bead. "From the ballroom floor. Part of a costume necklace?" Emily gasped. "Mine! It broke during the Charleston." Jap scowled. "So the girl was in the study?" "No. The bead travelled, on a shoe, perhaps." Graves shifted. Poirot's eyes flicked to the butler's soles. Clean now, but earlier. Jap dismissed the group. To Poirot, "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "Immensément. A locked room is a challenge to the intellect. But mark this, Jap. The poison was personal, delivered by someone Harrington trusted enough to drink with." Outside, fog still clung. Inside, suspicion thickened like soup. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. The house is no longer merely grieving. It is hunting. Every glance is a blade, every footstep a threat. Inspector Jap prowls the corridors like a terrier. Poirot sits motionless, the calm eye of the storm. And somewhere, the murderer tastes the first sour drop of panic. If your tea has gone cold, warm it now. If your nerves need steeling, reach for the biscuit tin. And when you're ready, tell me below. What would you have done with the empty cyanide vial? Now, let the complications begin. Poirot had commandeered the late Lord's desk. Before him lay the evidence in neat rows. The decanter sealed in a glass jar, the tumbler in a linen bag, the emerald green bead in a pillbox, the empty photographic vial labelled in Graves's copperplate. At 12:47 p.m., a maid burst in, apron to her eyes. "Sir, the safe! Again!" Poirot and Jap raced to the study safe. The dial had been spun to 0. The door yawned. Inside, the velvet tray but the central depression empty. The bracelet was gone. Jap swore. "Third time! Either we've a ghost or a blasted conjurer." Poirot knelt. On the safe's lower edge, a faint smear, grease paint, ochre, the shade used by the footman's Egyptian makeup. He scraped it into an envelope. "Tiens, our thief is one who wore costume last night." Sound, boots pounding corridors, doors slamming, a woman's sharp cry. Search parties fanned out. At 1:15, Graves discovered the bracelet in the dumbwaiter shaft between kitchen and dining room, wrapped in a blood-stained table napkin. Japp bagged it. Blood? Harrington wasn't cut. Poirot sniffed the stain. Port wine, not blood. A deliberate false trail. At 1:30, Sergeant Hale produced a crumpled note found in Harrington's wastepaper basket, missed in the first search. Return the bracelet by midnight, or join the others, TM, ink, common blue-black. Paper, Harrington Hall crested stationery. The Ankh symbol beneath the signature drawn with a mapping pen. Dr. Sinclair summoned, blanched. I sketched Ankhs for the ball invitations, but this hand is not mine." Poirot compared. The crossbar of the T was identical to Sinclair's lecture notes. Japp pounced. "Forged your own death threat, Doctor. Scared him into giving you the bracelet?" Sinclair's tick exploded. "I wanted it for the museum, yes, but murder." At 2, Lady Evelyn fainted in the conservatory. Revived, with smelling salts, she confessed. "Reginald and I quarrelled last week. He threatened to divorce me, cut me off without a penny. I have debts, Monte Carlo." Japp's eyes gleamed. Motive enough for poison. Emily, eavesdropping, burst in. Aunt Evie wouldn't. But Uncle was changing his will. Mr. Fortescue the solicitor comes tomorrow. Poirot's moustache twitched. Demain. Then tonight the murderer strikes to prevent disclosure. At 2:30, Vera Lang was caught at the railway station with a packed valise. "Darling," she drawled, "a girl can't stay in a house of death. Besides, the bracelet's bad luck." In her handbag, a first-class ticket to Southampton and a cable draft for $20,000 to a New York account. Japp, planning to vanish with the spoils. Vera laughed. "I'm worth 10 million. Why steal baubles?" Poirot noted her coral lipstick, freshly applied, yet last night's was smudged on the glass. At 3, Graves reported the greenhouse broken into. A pane smashed, earth scattered. The arsenic tin, tampered with, lid askew. Japp, red herring, cyanide's our poison. Poirot examined the broken pane. From inside, someone staged a break-in. At 3:30, Hastings discovered a charred scrap in the library grate. A corner of photograph. Harrington's face recognizable, the rest burned. Poirot, blackmail or destroyed evidence? At 4, the laboratory telegram arrived. Whiskey clean, cyanide in ice cubes only, melted by time of death. Japp slapped the desk. "Ice, delivered before the door was bolted." Poirot reconstructed. 11:35, Graves brings fresh ice bucket to study sideboard. 11:40, Harrington enters, bolts door, pours whiskey, adds poisoned ice. 11:55, ice melts, cyanide mixes, Harrington drinks. 12:05, death. Graves's face was stone. "I filled the bucket from the kitchen freezer at 11:30. Anyone could have slipped in." Poirot produced the grease paint smear, but only a footman, or someone wearing footman's makeup, touched the safe after death. At 4:30, Japp arrested Emily. In her wastepaper basket, a second empty cyanide vial, identical to Graves'. Emily wept. "Planted! Someone hates me!" Poirot freed her with a gesture. "No, the vial is too convenient. Observe." He held it to the light. A fingerprint, Graves', but smudged with coral lipstick. At 5 and twilight crept in. Poirot gathered the household in the ballroom. Now stripped of lotus columns, the floor scuffed with police chalk marks. "Mesdames et messieurs, The crime is simple, yet complex. The poison was in the ice. The bracelet stolen thrice to confuse. The note forged. The bloodstain poured. The broken pane staged. All to create chaos. But chaos has pattern. He held up the green bead. This travelled from ballroom to study on a shoe. Whose shoe had mud and grease paint? Graves shifted. Poirot continued. The lipstick on the glass, borrowed by many, but fresh on Miss Lang's lips today. She lent her tube last night. To whom? Vera shrugged. Half the chorus girls in London. Poirot smiled. Précisément, including one who is not a girl. He turned to Graves. The butler's scar whitened. Remove your shoe, monsieur. Graves hesitated, then obeyed. Inside the left brogue, a sliver of emerald green bead crushed into the leather. Jap lunged. Got you! Graves bolted. Hastings tackled him amid the dust sheets. Handcuffs clicked. But Poirot raised a hand. Attendez, the butler is guilty of theft, of planting evidence, of panic, but not of murder. Silence. The ice was poisoned before Graves entered the study. By one who knew Harrington's habit. Whiskey, 2 cubes, no water. One who could linger in the kitchen unseen. All eyes turned to the doorway. Lady Evelyn stood there, veil thrown back, eyes blazing. In her gloved hand, a third cyanide vial, full. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The house has held its breath for 5 chapters. Now it exhales. The masks are shattered, the ice melted, the lies laid bare. Hercule Poirot stands at the centre of the web, and the spider has nowhere left to hide. If you have walked with us this far, you deserve the truth. If you need a moment to steady your pulse, take it. And when the final note falls, tell me below. Did you see the shadow before the light? Now, let the little grey cells speak. Poirot faced the assembled company in the ballroom at 6:30. The chandelier was dark. Only the piano lamp threw a pool of gold across the chalk outline. Jap stood by the door, arms folded. Sergeant Hale guarded the corridor. The suspects formed a ragged semicircle. Lady Evelyn, veil discarded, eyes defiant. Emily, clutching a rosary. Dr. Sinclair, spectacles fogged with nerves. Vera Lang, cigarette unlit. Graves, wrists in cuffs yet dignity intact. Hastings, tie askew, staring as though at a conjuring trick. Poirot began without preamble. Mesdames et messieurs, you have played your parts with vigour. The thefts, the forged note, the blood that was poured, the broken pane, the planted vials, bravo! A symphony of confusion. But every symphony has a score, and I, Hercule Poirot, have read it to the final bar. He placed 6 objects on the piano lid. The bracelet, gleaming, the empty photographic vial, the coral lipstick tube, the emerald green bead, the grease paint smear in its envelope. A single ice cube, frozen anew in the kitchen, wrapped in linen. Regardez, the poison was in the ice. Fact, the ice was delivered by Graves at 11:35. Fact, Lord Harrington bolted the door at 11:40. Fact, he died between 11:55 and 12:05. Fact, therefore, the poison was introduced before the bolt was thrown, before Graves entered. Graves inclined his head. I have said so. Poirot turned to Lady Evelyn. You, madame, were seen in the kitchen at 11:25 by the scullery maid, fetching a lemon for your throat. You lingered by the freezer. Evelyn's chin lifted. I was thirsty. Poirot produced the 3rd vial, the full one she had dropped. Cyanide, photographic, identical to Graves. You kept a reserve. You dissolved it in warm water, poured it into the ice tray, refroze it in the kitchen's small electric freezer. 10 minutes only. You knew Reginald's ritual. 2 cubes, no water. You knew the ice would melt slowly in the warm study. You knew he would drink alone. Evelyn laughed. Sharp, brittle. Fantasy. I was dancing. Poirot shook his head. No, you danced until 11:20. Then you slipped away. Captain Hastings confirms he sought you for the next waltz and could not find you. You returned at 11:45, flushed, hair slightly disarranged. The scullery maid saw you leave the kitchen at 11:38, 2 minutes before Graves collected the bucket. He lifted the ice cube. This morning I repeated the experiment. 1 poisoned cube in warm whiskey. Deadly in 14 minutes. Harrington poured at 11:41. Drank at 11:55. Died at 12:03. Parfait. Japp stepped forward. But the bracelet thefts, why? Poirot's eyes gleamed. To create chaos. To make the curse seem real. To cast suspicion on every hand. The first theft, before the murder, was to establish the pattern. The second and third, after death, were to muddy the waters further. He turned to Dr. Sinclair. You, monsieur, forged the Ankh note. You hoped to frighten Harrington into donating the bracelet to your museum. You burned the photograph. You in Cairo selling a fake provenance to a German collector. Blackmail insurance. Sinclair sagged. Yes, but not murder. Poirot nodded to Graves. You, monsieur, stole the bracelet twice. Once to sell, once to frame Miss Emily. You used footman's grease paint to open the safe after death, leaving the smear. You planted the vial in Emily's room with lipstick from Miss Lang's borrowed tube. You staged the greenhouse break-in. Why? Graves's scar twitched. His lordship discovered my relationship with Lady Evelyn. He was cutting me from the will. I panicked. Evelyn's voice cut like flint. Liar! You acted alone. Poirot raised a hand. Assez. The murder was yours, madame, but the chaos was a duet. You poisoned the ice. Graves amplified the confusion to shield you. His lover. Together you created the impossible crime. He lifted the lipstick tube. Coral pink, borrowed by Emily, by Vera, by the maids. But the smudge on the glass was fresh. Applied after the ball, when you, madam, entered the study before the door was broken. You added the lipstick to implicate others. You forgot the ice had melted. The glass was clean until then. Evelyn's composure cracked. He was bankrupt, the estate mortgaged to the hilt. He planned to sell the bracelet, flee to Argentina, leave me penniless. I would have lost everything. Poirot's voice softened. So you chose murder over ruin. You used the curse as camouflage. But the little grey cells see through camouflage. He turned to Japp. Arrest them both. Lady Evelyn Harrington for murder. Elias Graves for accessory, after the fact theft and perjury. Japp snapped cuffs on Evelyn. She did not resist. Graves stood silent, scar livid against his pallor. Emily wept. Vera Lang lit her cigarette at last, hands steady. Sinclair removed his spectacles, polished them, replaced them, tick stilled. Hastings exhaled. By Jove, Poirot, ice cubes, never would have thought it. Poirot permitted himself a small smile. The simplest solutions are the most difficult to see, mon ami, like the nose on one's face. He lifted the bracelet. The curse? Pfft, a bauble. The only curse was greed and a love that turned to hate. Outside, the fog lifted. A watery sun touched the windows. The house exhaled. Chapter 7. Justice served. The storm has passed. The house stands stripped of its masks, its secrets spilled like champagne on parquet. Only the formalities remain. Handcuffs, statements, the slow machinery of British justice. Yet, even in the aftermath, Hercule Poirot finds symmetry. If you have stayed the course, you are due a quiet cup and a clear conscience. When you are ready, leave a final note below. What will you remember most from Harrington Hall? Now, let the gavel fall. Poirot entered at 9:30, the bracelet in a velvet pouch on the piano lid. Japp followed, notebook closed, bowler in hand. Sergeant Hale stood by the French windows, staring over the sodden lawns as though expecting the fog to return with fresh lies. Lady Evelyn Harrington, no longer Lady Anything, sat on a gilt chair, wrists cuffed before her, black veil discarded. Her ash-blonde hair had come unpinned. It hung in tired ropes. Beside her, Elias Graves, scar livid against prison pallor, stared at the floorboards. 2 constables flanked them. Poirot addressed the room, though only Hastings, Emily, Dr. Sinclair and Vera Lang remained to hear. Mesdames et messieurs, the play is ended, the curtain falls, but for the sake of order, let us recite the final act. He lifted the bracelet. Sunlight struck the lapis. It glowed like a small, cold sea. Fact: at 11:25 p.m., Evelyn Harrington entered the kitchen under pretext of a lemon for her throat. She dissolved photographic cyanide, her private store, into warm water, poured it into an ice tray, and placed it in the electric freezer. 10 minutes later, the cubes were solid. She returned to the ballroom at 11:45, hair slightly disarranged, cheeks flushed from the warm kitchen. He placed the bracelet down. Fact: at 11:35, Graves collected the ice bucket, containing the poisoned cubes, and delivered it to the study sideboard. He was innocent of the poison, but guilty of later thefts. Why? Because Lord Harrington had discovered their affair, and intended to dismiss him without reference. Panic made Graves an accessory. Japp grunted. "We've the freezer log. Scullery maid signed it. And the second full vial in Lady Harrington's jewel case. Her fingerprints only." Poirot nodded. Fact: Harrington entered at 11:40, bolted the door, poured whiskey, added 2 cubes. The ice melted slowly in the warm room. He drank at 11:55, death at 12:03. The lipstick on the glass, applied by Evelyn after the door was broken to implicate others. The grease paint on the safe. Graves, opening it post-mortem to steal the bracelet and plant chaos. He turned to Graves. "You used the dumbwaiter shaft to hide it. The napkin stained with port to mimic blood. The greenhouse pane broken from inside to suggest an outsider. You planted the vial in Emily's room with borrowed lipstick, all to shield your lover." Graves spoke for the first time, voice rough as gravel. "She said it was justice. He'd have ruined us both." Evelyn's laugh was brittle. He was ruined. The estate mortgaged thrice over. He planned to sell everything, including me, and vanish to South America with that wretched bracelet. I merely hastened the inevitable. Poirot's eyes softened a fraction. "Madame, murder is never inevitable. Only greed is." He produced a final item, a charred corner of photograph from the library grate. "This shows you Dr. Sinclair in Cairo, accepting payment for a forged provenance. Harrington discovered it. He threatened exposure unless you paid $10,000. You forged the Ankh note to frighten him into donating the bracelet to your museum instead, a lesser crime, but crime nonetheless. Sinclair removed his spectacles, polished them, replaced them. I'll face the consequences. The bracelet belongs in a museum, not a bankrupt vault." Vera Lang exhaled smoke through perfect nostrils. "And I? Merely a spectator with expensive tastes." Poirot inclined his head. "Mademoiselle, you are free to return to New York, minus the bracelet you coveted. The curse, it seems, was selective." Emily Cartwright stepped forward, eyes dry now. "Uncle's will. Mr. Fortescue arrives at noon. He left everything to me, provided I renounce my Parisian debts. Aunt Evelyn gets nothing. She knew," Poirot nodded, "précisément the final motive." Japp cleared his throat. "Charges: Evelyn Harrington, murder in the first degree. Elias Graves, accessory after the fact, theft, perverting justice. Dr. Sinclair, forgery, attempted blackmail. The rest, witnesses." The constables moved. Evelyn rose without assistance. At the door she paused, looked back at the chalk outline. "Tell them," she said to Poirot. "The curse was real. It just wore my face." Graves said nothing. The Black Maria's engine coughed to life outside. Sound. The vehicle crunches away. Silence returns, broken only by the clock striking 10. At 11, Mr. Fortescue, solicitor pince-nez, funereal suit, arrived with the will. Emily inherited the estate, the debts, the bracelet. She signed papers with a paille-siècle, trembling hand. "I'll sell the hall," she said, "pay the creditors, give the bracelet to the British Museum, no more curses." Dr. Sinclair, under guard, nodded approval. Vera Lang departed in her Daimler, waving a scarlet glove. "Darlings, do write. I adore a good scandal." Hastings and Poirot lingered in the winter garden amid dying orchids. "Rum business, Poirot. Ice cubes. Who'd have thought?" Poirot adjusted his moustache. "Mon ami, the English love their rituals. Whiskey, 2 cubes, no water. Ritual is the murderer's friend, and the detective's." He lifted the bracelet one last time. "A beautiful thing, yet it brought only ugliness. C'est la vie." They boarded the afternoon train to London. The Sussex hills rolled away, gold and russet. Poirot sipped chocolate. Hastings read The Sporting Life. At Victoria, a telegram awaited. Another puzzle. Cornwall. Urgent. Mycroft. Poirot smiled. "Encore, Hastings. The little grey cells never rest." Chapter 8. The Hidden Motive. The arrests have been made. The handcuffs clicked. The Black Maria vanished down the gravel drive. Yet Hercule Poirot lingers in the empty ballroom, turning a final piece of the puzzle in his palm. Justice is served, but truth is a deeper well. If you thought the story ended with Chapter 7, you are forgiven. If you sensed a shadow still moving behind the curtain, you are wise. Settle back. There is one more layer to peel. And when the moth settles, tell me below, what did you miss on the first pass? Now, let the hidden motive rise. Sound. The soft scrape of Poirot's chair as he sits at the piano. A single minor chord resonates. Poirot had not left with Hastings. At 7:15 p.m., while the household dined on cold cuts under police guard, he returned to the study alone. The chalk outline had been scrubbed away, but the ghost of Harrington's sprawled body remained in the grain of the desk. He opened the safe, combination unchanged, and removed a slim, leather-bound ledger Harrington had kept hidden behind the revolver. The pages crackled like dry leaves. Entries in Harrington's spidery hand. Oct 12, Sinclair's forgery confirmed, $10,000 or exposure. Oct 14, Evelyn's Monte Carlo debts $18,000, refused advance. Oct 15, Graves's war record, court-martial for theft, 1917, kept silent for loyalty. Oct 16, Emily's Parisian bills, $4,200, threatened disinheritance. Oct 17, Vera Lang's cable, will match any bid plus $5,000 for bracelet, refused. Poirot's moustache bristled. Blackmail, greed, desperation, the usual orchestra. But the final entry, dated the morning of the ball, was in a different ink, fresh, violet. Oct 18. The bracelet is not gold, core is lead, lapis painted glass. Sinclair's forgery complete. Will confront him tonight. Curse is mine. Will sell to Lang for $100,000 and vanish. Evelyn suspects. Must silence her. Poirot closed the house. Ledger. Tiens. The curse was fraud. The murder was to protect the fraud. But who wrote the final entry? He examined the ink. Evelyn's personal violet, from the boudoir inkstand. The handwriting. Harrington's, but the pressure lighter. The loops hurried. A forgery within a forgery. Sound. The study door opens. Soft footsteps. Stockinged feet on parquet. Emily Cartwright slipped in. Wrapper over her nightgown. Hair in a single braid. Monsieur Poirot, I couldn't sleep. The will, Uncle left me everything, but the debts swallow it. And this, she held out a crumpled cable. Emily, bracelet fake. Sinclair switched it in Cairo. Sell to Lang before truth out. $50,000 your share. Reg. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Sent yesterday morning. You received it after the murder? She nodded. I thought it a cruel joke, but the ledger. Précisément. Your uncle discovered the switch after sending the cable. He wrote the violet entry to frame Evelyn, knowing she used that ink. He planned to flee with the real bracelet, leaving a fake in the safe, but someone else knew. He led Emily to the library. On the mantel, a small brass microscope. Harrington's hobby. Beneath the lens, a lapis shard from the bracelet. Painted glass, the gold band, thin plate over lead. The real bracelet was switched before the auction. Sinclair sold the genuine article in Cairo, replaced it with this forgery. Harrington discovered the fraud last week. He planned to confront Sinclair, sell the fake to Vera Lang for $100,000 and disappear, but... Emily whispered, someone killed him to keep the secret. Poirot produced a final item, a tiny key found taped beneath the desk drawer. It opened a secret compartment in the bracelet's clasp. Inside, a rolled scrap of papyrus, hieroglyphs in modern ink. Translation: The consort's gold is cursed with lead. Death to the deceiver. Emily gasped. Sinclair's handwriting. Poirot nodded. Sinclair forged the curse and the bracelet. When Harrington threatened exposure, Sinclair poisoned the ice, knowing Graves would deliver it. He forged the anknote to mimic the curse. He burned the Cairo photograph to destroy evidence. The thefts, Graves panicking to protect Evelyn, the lipstick, the grease paint, the planted vials, all Graves. But the murder, Sinclair. He summoned Japp by telephone. At 8:45, Sinclair was rearrested in the billiard room, mid-confession to forgery. You switched the bracelet, Poirot said. You poisoned the ice to silence Harrington before he exposed you. You let Evelyn and Graves take the blame. Collateral damage. Sinclair's tick stilled. The museum needed funds. The forgery was academic. Harrington's greed forced my hand. Japp cuffed him. Murder's not academic, Doctor. Evelyn, released from her cell, wept, not for freedom, but for the lover who had used her. Graves, recuffed, bowed his head. I thought I protected her. I only buried us both. At 10:00 p.m., the real bracelet, recovered from Sinclair's luggage, hidden in a hollowed book, was returned to the safe. The fake remained in evidence. Emily signed it over to the British Museum, debts paid by the sale of the hall. Poirot and Hastings departed at dawn. The train steamed north through frost-rimed fields. Hastings. Dash it, Poirot. A fake curse, a fake bracelet, a fake entry, enough to make a fellow dizzy. Poirot sipped his chocolate. Mon ami, the greatest curse is the one we invent to justify our sins. Sinclair invented a curse. Harrington invented a fortune. Evelyn invented a future. Only the lead was real. He patted the velvet pouch. The true bracelet will rest in Bloomsbury, the false one, in Scotland Yard. And the motive? Pride, the deadliest poison of all. Chapter 9. The final twists. You were told the curtain fell at Chapter 7. You were allowed a hidden motive in Chapter 8. But mysteries, like onions, have one last skin, thin, bitter, and apt to sting the eyes. Hercule Poirot has returned alone, summoned by a telegram that arrived too late for the official record. If you are still here, you are either sleepless or insatiable. Either way, pour a nightcap, lower the lights, and when the final twist uncoils, whisper in the comments, at what sentence did the floor drop away? Now, let the last lie surface. Poirot entered at 12:47 a.m., the house officially empty save for a skeleton police guard dozing in the kitchen. The telegram, delivered by hand, no postmark, lay crumpled in his pocket. Bracelet real, ledger fake, Sinclair innocent, meet library midnight, EC, Emily Cartwright. She had not boarded the London train with the others. He found her already there, silhouetted against the safe. She wore a man's dressing gown, hair loose, eyes luminous in the lamplight. On the desk, the real bracelet genuine gold, lapis uncracked, emeralds like drops of Nile water. Beside it, the lead forgery. Between them, the violet ink ledger, now open to a fresh page. Emily spoke first, voice steady. I forged the final entry. I switched the bracelets back. I sent the cable to myself. I let Sinclair take the blame. Poirot did not startle. Mademoiselle, you have played a dangerous game. Explain slowly. She laid 3 objects on the blotter. A tiny vial, empty photographic cyanide, Graves's label. A theatre ticket, Cairo, 1924, Sinclair's name. A love letter, Harrington to Emily, dated 1923, passionate, incriminating. Uncle was not bankrupt, she began. He pretended ruin to manipulate us. The debts were mine. Paris gowns, roulette, a lover who blackmailed me. Uncle paid, then owned me. He planned to marry me to a Belgian count, for alliances. When I refused, he threatened to expose the letters. She touched the real bracelet. Sinclair did switch it in Cairo, but at my request. I needed funds to buy silence. Uncle discovered the switch last month. He kept the real one, planted the fake, and wrote the violet entry to frame Evelyn, knowing her ink, her debts. He intended to flee with the genuine article, leaving Evelyn and Graves to hang for his murder. Poirot's eyes narrowed. But he was murdered. Emily smiled. Small, sad. Yes, by me. I poisoned the ice at 11:25. I used Graves's vial, stolen weeks earlier. I knew his delivery schedule. I returned to the ballroom at 11:45, hair tousled from the warm kitchen. I added the lipstick after the door was broken to muddy the waters. I forged the ink note, Sinclair's style, but my pen. I burned the Cairo photograph, my copy. I planted the vials, the grease paint, the port-stained napkin. I even broke the greenhouse pane from inside. She lifted the love letter. This would have ruined me. Marriage or disgrace, I chose neither. Poirot's voice was soft. And Sinclair? Innocent of murder, guilty of forgery for me. He thought the poison was arsenic, to sicken, not kill, a warning. I swapped it for cyanide. He confessed to protect me. She opened the ledger's final page, blank beneath the violet forgery. Beneath, in her own hand, Octroi 18. The curse is love turned to lead. I inherit freedom. Forgive me. E.C. Poirot closed the book. You staged your own inheritance. The will, valid. The debts, paid by the real bracelet sale. You framed Evelyn, Graves, Sinclair. You let me believe the ice was the key, the lipstick the clue, the ledger the motive. Emily's eyes filled. I counted on your symmetry, monsieur. You see patterns. I gave you a perfect one, too perfect. The ice melted in 14 minutes. The lipstick was fresh. The grease paint on the safe, my shoe borrowed from a footman. I left the emerald bead deliberately, every thread tied. She produced a railway timetable. The 1:10 a.m. goods train to Dover. A cabin on the SS Minerva to Alexandria. The bracelet will fund a new life. You can stop me, or let the curse claim one last victim. The past. Silence stretched. The clock struck one slow chime. Poirot took the real bracelet, weighed it in his palm. Mademoiselle, Hercule Poirot does not trade in curses, but he understands desperation. Your uncle forged a prison of love and greed. You broke it with poison. The law will not forgive. He placed the bracelet in the safe, spun the dial. But the law is not here. Jap sleeps. The guards drink cocoa. The train leaves in 23 minutes. Emily's breath caught. You'd let me go? Poirot adjusted his moustache. Non, I let truth go, for tonight. Tomorrow, the ledger will be found. The bracelet will vanish, officially. Emily Cartwright will be a ghost. The curse ends with you. He opened the French window. Fog swirled in, cold and clean. Go! Take the service stairs, the stables, bicycle to the station. Do not look back. Emily hesitated, then pressed the love letter into his hand. Burn it. She vanished into the fog. The bicycle's bell tinkled once, distant. Poirot stood alone. He struck a match, watched the letter curl to ash. Then he opened the safe, removed the fake bracelet, and slipped it into his pocket. Sound, the goods train's whistle. Far off, then closer, then gone. Silence returns. At dawn, Japp found the ledger. Final entry, erased with gum arabic. The safe, empty. A note in Poirot's hand. The curse has claimed its due. The bracelet is returned to the Nile. H.P. Japp swore. Hastings scratched his head. Sinclair was released. Forgery charges dropped for lack of evidence. Evelyn and Graves served reduced sentences. Accessories to a crime that never quite happened. Chapter 10. The Revelation and Justice Served. The official record closes here. The newspapers have printed their tidy endings. Country house murder, widow and butler convicted, archaeologist exonerated. The public sighs, satisfied. Yet Hercule Poirot, on the morning the removal vans arrive, returns one last time to Harrington Hall. He carries a small leather case and a conscience heavier than lead. If you have followed every corridor, every lie, every melted cube of ice, you deserve the true denouement. When the music ends, leave a final note below. What price would you pay for mercy? Now, let the revelation fall. Poirot stood alone amid the stripped grandeur. The chalk outline was gone. Only a faint stain on the parquet remembered the Pharaoh's fall. He opened the leather case. Inside, the real bracelet, gold, lapis, emeralds, nestled beside the fake, lead-painted glass. Between them lay Emily's love letter, edges singed but intact. He had not burned it. At 8:15 a.m., Inspector Japp arrived, summoned by a second telegram, Poirot's own. He found the detective seated at the piano, the bracelets side by side like twin defendants. "Poirot, you cryptic beggar," Japp growled. "The case is closed. Evelyn and Graves are en route to Holloway. Sinclair's free. Emily's vanished, presumed suicide. What the devil do you want?" Poirot lifted the real bracelet. "Mon cher Japp, the case is not closed. It is reopened. Observe." He laid out the evidence in a perfect line. The real bracelet, returned by anonymous post from Alexandria, wrapped in brown paper, no note. The fake, from his private collection, fingerprints wiped clean. The love letter, Harrington to Emily, 1923. A railway ticket stub, Dover to Calais, dated the night of the murder. A single emerald green bead, from Emily's costume, found in the bicycle shed. A laboratory report, cyanide residue, on the real bracelet's clasp, microscopic. Japp's moustache bristled. "You let her go." Poirot inclined his head. "Oui, and now I correct the balance." He told the story, the true one. Emily Cartwright poisoned the ice at 11:25. She forged the violet ledger entry, switched the bracelets, framed Evelyn, Graves, Sinclair. She staged every theft, every red herring. She fled on the 110 goods train with the real bracelet, planning a new life in Egypt, but guilt is heavier than gold. He produced a second letter. Emily's handwriting, postmarked Cairo, 3 days ago. "Monsieur Poirot, the Nile is beautiful, but it reflects only my face. I cannot wear the curse. I return the bracelet. Let the museum have it. Let Evelyn and Graves go free. They suffered enough for love. Sinclair keeps his forgery. It is all he has. Tell Japp the truth. Tell him I confess. I jumped tonight. The curse ends with me. Ici." Japp's face softened. "The girl's dead?" Poirot shook his head. "No. She lives in Alexandria, under the name Timarut. The letter is a forgery, my forgery. The bracelet was mailed by a priest I paid. The confession, fabricated. Emily is free, but the curse is broken. She will never wear gold again. He lifted the fake bracelet. This goes to Scotland Yard. Evidence. The real one, to the British Museum, anonymous donation. Evelyn and Graves, released this morning. Charges reduced to conspiracy after the fact. Sinclair, deported, academic ruin his only sentence. Japp stared. You played God. Poirot's eyes were steady. No, I played detective. The law punishes. Justice sometimes forgives. Emily killed to escape a cage. Evelyn and Graves acted from love. Sinclair from pride. All suffered. The only innocent was the bracelet. He closed the case. Harrington forged a prison of greed. Emily broke it with poison. I broke it with mercy. C'est fini. Japp exhaled. And the newspapers? Poirot smiled. We'll print the official story. The public loves a tidy villain. Let Evelyn be the widow, Graves the butler, Sinclair the forger. Emily, a tragic suicide. Truth is safe with us. They walked out together. The removal vans rumbled away. Harrington Hall, sold to a brewer, would become a hotel. The ballroom would host weddings, not murders. On the train to London, Poirot gazed at the frost-laced fields. Hastings, returned from a fishing trip, found him in the dining car. Case closed, old chap. Poirot sipped his tisane. Closed, oui, but some doors open inward. He slipped the singed love letter into his waistcoat pocket. A reminder, mon ami. Love is the only curse that cannot be forged.